Archaeologists and historians spend their whole professional lives looking for precious relics and artifacts, so it must really annoy them when ordinary civilians find them totally by accident. Surprising finds turn up with shocking regularity, including long-lost treasures that have been considered missing for hundreds of years. Join us as we go on a treasure tour of shocking, accidental, and valuable discoveries in this video. Perhaps this first discovery shouldn't be described as totally accidental. After all, it was found in a mine in Brazil, and the man who found it was a miner. It's just that nobody could have expected an emerald of this size to be hiding underground anywhere on the planet. The finder of the emerald is known only as FG because he doesn't want his true identity to be discovered. His precious stone is so valuable he fears for his life in the event of somebody coming to try to take it away from him. The green stone FG found in Bahia, Brazil is more than 4 feet tall when stood on its end and weighs in excess of 800 pounds. It was buried over 600 feet below the ground and contained more than 180,000 carats of emerald. A conservative estimate of its cash value would give it a value of around $300 million. FG has turned down offers in excess of $100 million so far, but will have to sell it soon to pay the large private security team he's hired to protect it. On December 8, 1949, 3 brothers went out to dig clay for bricks in Bulgaria. They found plenty of clay, but the clay was hiding something far more valuable: a treasure haul, which is now known as the Panegyurishite treasure. The discovery was made by Mikhail Petko and Pavel Dikov, contains an amphora, a fale, and 7 24-karat solid gold rhytons. They didn't realize the significance of the discovery at first, incorrectly concluding that they'd stumbled across buried brass instruments belonging to gypsies. But when they took them to the curator of a local museum, he excitedly informed them that the treasures come from the 4th century BCE and belonged to Thracian king Xuthus III. It's likely that the precious items were buried to protect them from invading Celts or Macedonians, but nobody ever returned to retrieve them. It's unknown how much compensation the brothers received, if any at all, but the treasure is now proudly displayed in the Thracian collection of Sofia's National Museum of History. In 1999, a Swedish news crew headed out to Slite in North Gotland to record a feature about illegal treasure hunting, and ended up taking part in the discovery of the most extensive collection of silver Viking treasure ever discovered. Now known as the Spillings Hoard, named in honor of the farm it was found on, the collection contains over 14,000 silver Islamic coins, among other rare and precious items. It appears that they'd been carefully hidden beneath the floorboards of a Viking outhouse 1,100 years ago. The news team chose Spillings Farm because landowner Bjorn Engstrom had found 150 silver coins there earlier in the same year, but nobody had any clue there was anything else to be seen there, let alone anything of this size and significance. Much of the silver had been melted down and turned into a sort of metal cake, but hundreds of individual bangles are still clearly visible. The landowner was paid the equivalent of $250,000 for the discovery, but the real value of the collection of silver is far higher. In late 2017, a Romanian man found himself in trouble with the police for not informing them of a gold bracelet he'd found in his garden 2 years later. The man thought nothing of the bracelet and had been allowing his daughter to play with it, but he took it to a pawn shop in November 2017 to find out if it had any real value. The answer was that it did, and it was stolen treasure. His discovery was a rare Dacian bracelet, and it was made of 24-karat gold. Jewelry like this was made and worn by the Thracian people more than 2,000 years ago, and much of it has been stolen and looted from Romania over the course of the past several decades. Romania is now in the process of pursuing its lost treasure whenever it turns up for auction all over the world, with international law enforcement officials helping their cause. It's to be hoped that the police were lenient with the young father, who genuinely appeared to have no idea that he'd given his child a bracelet worth more than $100,000 to play with. Jewelry, which once belonged to the ill-fated French Queen Marie Antoinette, went to auction in Switzerland in late 2018, and the collection had quite a remarkable story behind it. Marie Antoinette was executed by guillotine in October 1793 at the peak of the French Revolution, but it appears she went to great lengths to dispose of her valuables before that happened. The collection that made its way to the famous Sotheby's auctioneers included pearl earrings, pearl necklaces, and an enormous pearl pendant. The Queen apparently had quite the taste for pearls. Until their owners sent them for auction, they hadn't been seen for over 200 years and were considered to be lost. The Queen is thought to have packed her goods into a wooden box as she prepared to run away from France and sent them ahead of herself to Brussels. From there, they went to Vienna and spent a short time in the custody of Roman Emperor Francis II. Nobody knows what happened to them after that, but they ended up in the possession of a perfectly ordinary family in Switzerland, who won't say anything beyond claiming to have inherited them. The Alfred Jewel is one of the most intricate and valuable treasures of the Anglo-Saxon period in England, and it's far from clear how anything so precious ended up lost and buried anonymously in a field. The 9th century item of jewelry was commissioned personally by King Alfred, who used it as a pointer to assist with reading. It's thought that he had several less valuable copies made, which he distributed to friends and relatives. The pointer was presumably affixed to the socket in the dragon's head at the foot of the jewel, but would have been the least interesting and valuable part of an object that contains a gold-framed quartz crystal. Historians can't agree on the identity of the human figure depicted on the jewel. It could be Jesus Christ, or it could be Saint Cuthbert, who was an important saint in England long before St. George replaced him. In the late 17th century, the jewel was found in a field in Somerset, close to Athelney Abbey, the place from which Alfred launched an attack against the invading Danes. It's possible that he lost the jewel in battle, and it stayed in the earth for 700 years. When you're young and buying your first home, or even if you're just trying to carry out some renovations on a budget, be sure to always carefully examine any second-hand furniture you buy. It just might be hiding a priceless surprise. In 2007, a German student looking to furnish her apartment cheaply bought a pull-out sofa bed for the equivalent of $200. When she took it home and fully opened it out, she discovered a small oil painting, measuring only 10 inches by 15 inches, painted on a canvas of shale. Although the identity of the painter was never verified or authenticated, the style of the art was extremely similar to Venetian artist Carlo Saraceni, who created the bulk of his work between 1605 and 1620. The painter's signature wasn't on it, but there was a title, Preparation to Escape Egypt. The student hoped for the best and sent it for auction in Hamburg, where a dealer was sufficiently convinced it was a Saraceni work to pay just under $30,000 for it. A team of recreational divers in Israel was having the time of their lives exploring an old shipwreck in the post of Caesarea when they came across a discovery that would change all of their lives. Unbeknown to them, this particular shipwreck had never been explored before. It was 1,600 years old and contained an enormous hoard of ancient Roman treasure. The hold of the ship was still mostly intact and contained a whole range of items, including a statue of the moon goddess Luna, an ornate bronze lamp, and enormous piles of coins that had fused together, but still bore the stamp of legendary Roman Emperor Constantine. Although we consider these items valuable now, experts who've since investigated the shipwreck say that it was a humble merchant vessel, and it was probably taking the haul to be recycled, because it was considered to be worthless junk. With no visible sign of damage to the boat, it's likely it went down in a storm, sinking into a layer of sand that's helped to preserve it for so many centuries. When a severe storm hit Costa Rica in 2016, two park rangers in Cocos Island decided to head out and explore their park to survey the damage it had done. There was a lot of damage to be found, but the storm had done something else too. It had ripped away layers of soil and earth and revealed 5 wooden chests containing gold, silver, jewelry, ornate candlesticks, and religious sculptures. It's the richest find in the history of Costa Rica and has a total value of around $200 million. There had always been rumors of buried treasure in the park, but the government banned treasure hunting in 1970, and so nobody had ever had the chance to look for it. Theories as to the owner of the treasure vary, with notorious pirates Bennett Graham and Benito Bonito both believed to be candidates. They are known to have robbed Spanish galleons in the area during the 18th and 19th centuries. It's also possible that it's part of the missing treasure of Lima, stolen from Viceroy José de la Serna by British Captain William Thompson in 1820. The most intriguing thing about this next find is that it may only represent part of the treasure that should have been discovered. A couple named Angel and Eddie were renovating their home in Arizona in 2015 when they noticed a 4-digit code scratched onto the back of an old medicine box in a spare room. The code meant nothing to the couple until they found a safe hidden behind a wall during the same renovation process. Instantly putting 2 and 2 together, they used the code to open the safe and found $50,000 in 1950s American banknotes waiting for them inside. There was also a bottle of fine vintage 1960s bourbon and a strange paperback book called A Guide for the Perplexed. Inside the book, things got even weirder. There was a black and white picture of an unknown man, a map of Arizona with a cross marked in the location of Mesa, and a bingo card, upon which the only number circled was 66. Several passages inside the book are underlined. All of these things together might indicate a code for a treasure map, but thus far, Angel and Eddie haven't been able to decipher it. They're more than happy with their $50,000 windfall. We've all heard stories of incredible items turning up at flea markets, but none quite like this. A woman in London, England, went to a flea market during the 1980s and found her attention grabbed by a ring. Both she and the seller thought it was costume jewelry and agreed on a price of £10. That's around $13 US. For the next 30 years, she wore it to work, in the gym, going to the shops, and just about everywhere else she went without ever realizing its actual value. One day, she met a jeweler, and the jeweler almost fainted when he saw it. He insisted she allowed him to investigate and value it for her. And that's when she found out she'd been walking around with a 19th century 26-carat diamond on her finger for 3 decades. Choosing to stay anonymous, she passed the ring to Sotheby's to be auctioned and received a life-changing sum of money in return, £656,000, which works out as $849,000. We suppose the ultimate good luck story when it comes to finding priceless treasures would be a child finding something that's worth a fortune. And that's precisely the story we have for you here. 3-year-old James Hyatt had only spent a few minutes of his life with a metal detector in his hand when he struck gold in Hockley, England. And we mean struck gold literally. James had found a solid gold reliquary just 8 inches beneath the soil. Reliquaries were popular in the 16th century and were generally used to contain either religious relics, spiritual charms, or the ashes of deceased loved ones. This particular example is one of the finest ever found, with a depiction of the Virgin Mary on one of its sides and a trio of hearts on the other, symbolism which could even identify King Henry VIII as the owner. James's lucky discovery is expected to be worth $3 million when it goes for auction, although some of that money will have to be shared with the farmer who owns the land it was found on. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, and you will be the first to know when a new video comes out. Thank you for watching, and see you soon.